Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, I'm live. I'm in the studio. We're going to be getting into all the latest Manchester United news. So make sure you are joining us in the comments and the chat, and you are hitting like, share, and subscribe. We've not pushed subscribers for a little while on the Paper Talk. We're almost at 800,000. I think we can get there before the end of the season. I know that sounds insane because there's only about 2 weeks left, but once we lift that Europa League trophy, the subs will just come steaming in. So yeah, subscribe to the channel. Loads of stories to get through. Before we do though, good to see the usual suspects and some new ones in the chat. Good to see Maurice Marshall, BMW Racing 1974, Mick Holohan, Kevin Aitchison. I think, is the Notch still there? Yes, there he is. Colin Coupleditch as well. Thank you for all your support. Let's talk about this, the main story and the lead. The Europa League. This is from Miguel Delaney in The Independent, and it says, why a huge summer for Man United will hinge on the Europa League final. This isn't like brand new information that no one's ever heard before. We know that United's transfer budget is going to be affected by whether we have Champions League football. Kieran Maguire said that to Adam McCullough on The Overlap quite a while ago. He said, look, the Europa League final has massive repercussions for Manchester United, not just for Ruben Amorim and winning that first trophy in his first season after what has been a pretty disastrous campaign, certainly in the league, but in terms of attracting players and in terms of the money you've got to spend on players. Now, I think, you may disagree, and by all means get involved in the chat in the comments, I think you can still attract players without having Champions League football. I do. And the reason I think that is because we've done it in the past. We signed Henrik Mkhitaryan, Paul Pogba and Zlatan Ibrahimovic when we didn't have Champions League football. It's doable. Now, you might argue, well, Jay, we had, I think, Europa that season. We hadn't even got that if we hadn't got Champions League. I understand all that. But I think players will still come to a club the size of Manchester United if you give them the right money and if you can convince them that the club is moving forward, that there is a project to join that is worth joining. And let's not forget, even though everyone wants to hate on United, we are still the biggest club in England and one of the biggest clubs in the world. We just are. Even though on the pitch we're terrible, off the pitch our stature is pretty huge. So you can still get players, but without that money to buy them, you ain't getting them. And I think this is what Miguel Delaney is speaking about here. And also some of the players that United want, they've already been earmarked, and it's like, look, if we have this money, we can get them. If we don't, we can't. So it says here, United have made advances on Liam Delap and Antoine Semenyo, although the possibility of both arriving in the summer may swing on Europa League victory and sales. The Old Trafford hierarchy have also been speaking to Italian clubs about potentially selling both Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund. Now, with Zirkzee, there is another story that I'm going to get to in a little while. I think he's been linked with a move back to Serie A, as it says there. Højlund's a funny one. I don't know what's going to happen with Rasmus Højlund. I don't know what the manager's thoughts on Rasmus Højlund are. Because Rasmus Højlund, bear with me here, this season is becoming so bad for Rasmus Højlund. You begin to think, like, is this just an anomaly? Is he just having one of those seasons where it's like almost everything at the minute is going wrong for him? Almost everything. Like, this isn't a true indication of where he's at. Is there a chance he can get back to the real Rasmus Højlund next season and we can get a player? No, there's a player still there. Because he's been that bad, you think he's never that bad this season. He's not. This isn't the player that we signed from Atalanta. This isn't the player we saw in that first season at Manchester United. It's just like, this is sort of a shadow of that player. So maybe if you get the right players around him, maybe we can get a bit more confidence. Maybe there's still a player there. I'm not so sure. Let me know what you think. I do worry about Rasmus Højlund, I'm not going to lie. However, the manager might be looking at it and going, look, the guy's had 30-odd games under me, barely scored, doesn't seem to have a good sort of relationship with his teammates, certainly on the pitch. Anyway, I don't know how they get on off the pitch, but there doesn't seem to be that sort of coherence, that chemistry you want from an attacking lineup. You look at the way they're arguing a lot as well, especially him and Alejandro Garnacho. He seems frustrated. He isn't getting the service he wants. He isn't getting the goals he wants. Sometimes he isn't making the runs he wants. Do we just move him on? I don't know. Joshua Zirkzee is slightly different. In terms of numbers, he's almost identical. The difference with Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund is Joshua Zirkzee looks like he's got a load of confidence, looks like he's got that swagger, wants the ball all the time, seems to have won over the fans after obviously having a few doubters and getting booed against Newcastle. The issue you've got there is the quality quite there? And also, he's not a 9. He's a 9.5, which is nonsense. He's basically a 10, isn't he? So, does he fit into the system? Is he better than other options in those two number 10 roles? I don't know. I don't know what Ruben Amorim thinks of either of those players, but there might be a situation where one of them goes back to Italy. Get involved in the chat and the comments. Let me know what you think. Who would you prefer if you had to choose? Would you rather see Joshua Zirkzee go back to Italy or Rasmus Højlund? I'm guessing most people at the minute would prefer to keep hold of Joshua Zirkzee. Do you think we should keep hold of both of them? Do you think we should move both of them on? Let me know what you think. Also, as well, you know, it's not just sales of those two. There's other players that have been looked at as potentially moving on. There's Marcus Rashford, of course. I don't think he'll play for Manchester United again unless it's a little bit of pre-season. Jadon Sancho's another one who should be moving on. Antony is another one who's probably going to be moving on. Tyrone Malacia is going to be moving on. I expect Victor Lindelof to move on, which is a move that probably should have happened a little while ago. Maybe there's one or two others. Eriksen, I think he's coming towards the end of his deal. Johnny Evans, Tom Eaton might move on. We'll have to wait and see on some of these. Some of them are, you know, you're not going to get much money for them. Some of them are out of contract. Some of them, the likes of Rashford, Antony and Sancho, you'll get a little bit of money for. And there might be another sale, a big sale. There was talk one there that maybe Alejandro Garnacho could be heading to Napoli or even Chelsea. Don't know if there's any movement there on that one. Also, as well, a little rumour, rumblings that Kobbie Mainoo could be someone that the club look at moving on. I'd hate to see that happen. Let me know what you think. John Claffey says Kulusevski out for the final. Yeah, he is. That news broke yesterday on Sky Sports. I think he's had an operation on his knee, or he's having an operation on his knee, so he's not going to be available. Look, it is a boost of sorts to Manchester United when one of your rivals or the team you face in the final loses a key player, but I'm not going to sit here and sort of be buzzing about the fact they've got an injury. It's, you know, you should be able to beat Spurs when they're at full strength, and I do actually feel for anyone who misses out on a final, even if it is someone United are going to face. Steve M, who's been a member of the academy for 29 months. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Everyone over 25 except Bruno should be up for sale. That's not the craziest thing I've heard, you know. I'm just thinking now, who've we got that's over 25? Is there any player that's over 25 that I wouldn't want to see go? I mean, there's some players that are over 25 that I really like. I think Mazraoui's over 25, isn't he? Would I want to see him sold? No. De Ligt, is he 25 now, I think? But there's a lot of players there that you look at and go, not too sure about. We'll have to wait and see. We'll see what happens in the summer. I think we can have a little bit of an exodus. And I think we probably need it in terms of the quality of the squad isn't up to scratch. And also we need it to bring some players in. There's a story here about... in fact, should we talk about Ruben Amorim's quotes? Let's go on to that one, please. So, Ruben Amorim has said this is everywhere. I think this is from Sky Sports. These are his quotes. I think we had him. We've posted the video, I think, of this, so it's not like it's, you know, it's only Sky that have got this, not an exclusive. There was the media open day yesterday for the Europa League final sort of preview that the club did. We spoke to Noussair Mazraoui, we spoke to Diogo Dalot, there was the press conference as well, we were there for that. So if you've not done so, you can go and check out a video. We put together like a bit of a vlog type thing about the entire day. Adam McCullough was down there for us. Go and check that out. Some good conversations, good chats, good interviews with the likes of Mazraoui and Dalot ahead of the big game next week. Ruben Amorim has basically said he's far from quitting. There was talk one there. He does this thing sometimes, Ruben Amorim, where I think post-match presser, where he's a little bit emotional, he's a little bit deflated when we lost a game, and he'll say things, and it's like, I don't think he's being naive when he says it, but I think perhaps he might either regret saying them or maybe a week later or a day later realise just how amplified those comments have been. We've seen him roll back a few times on certain comments, only certain ones. It's not. I don't think he comes out, says nonsense and then comes back a week later and says, oh, I didn't mean any of it. But sometimes, you know, he'll say something, then that becomes the main headline and he'll be like, look, slow down a little bit. So there was talk one there, or he said something that alluded to him leaving if results didn't improve. He said someone else can come in and sort out the situation. I'm sort of paraphrasing. However, he said that he's far from quitting as Manchester United boss after warning he could walk away if results do not improve next season. I like Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim has got to convince Ineos as well. Not only that he's the right man for the job, but that he wants to stay. If he gives any indication that he doesn't want to be the United manager, Ineos are going to jump on that and get rid of him, because you cannot have a manager who doesn't want to be here. So he's explained himself here. He says, what I am saying is that since I arrived here, I am always talking about the standards. I cannot see the team having these results, especially in the Premier League, and not saying something and take responsibility. I have a clear plan of what to do. I understand the problems of the team. He then goes on to say, we need to perform or else they will change us. Also, as well, there's another little story here. Yeah, we had this last night in the news. He's paying for the staff tickets for the final. I think staff, friends and family and some of the staff themselves, when I say staff, I mean the people that work at United, and I think some of the coaching staff's family won't get free tickets, and Ruben Amorim has stepped up and offered to pay for them, or he's going to pay for them. I think Eric Cantona said he's going to pay for them as well on social media. I like Ruben Amorim, and he gets the sort of off-the-field stuff perfectly. His interviews are great. He's very honest. He's got a bit of charisma to him as well. Obviously, offering to pay for staff tickets is a positive thing. It's embarrassing that we have a manager who's offering to pay for that. It feels like we're almost in administration. You remember when like Wayne Rooney was paying Derby County's players' wages? It feels almost like that. And it is slightly ridiculous. The club the size of Manchester United are relying on a manager to pay for staff tickets. But this is where we're at. Also, and I'll keep going on about this, and I know I bore you all with it, but he does that stuff with the fans very well. My missus and my daughter, my youngest daughter, met him at the weekend. They waited after the West Ham game. God knows why they wanted to wait for the players after the West Ham game, but they just did. And they said that he spent ages with loads of fans, and it's not easy when you've just had another deflating defeat, and yet you're taking the time out to pose for pictures and autographs with fans. A lot of managers and players don't do that. So I do like that side of Ruben Amorim. We just need to see an improvement in results, and I think if we stick with this man, we will get them. Let's talk about defenders that could be leaving. Why would anyone want to leave Manchester United? Ruben Amorim has confirmed that, let me get it right. It's not leaving. It's that are injured or not available for the Chelsea game. Lenny Yoro, De Ligt, Aiden Heaven and Delo are not going to make the trip to Stamford Bridge, although he's hopeful, Ruben Amorim's hopeful they'll be available for selection ahead of next week's Europa League final. We know that Lisandro Martinez isn't going to be available at all this season because of his ACL surgery. I think Yoro, De Ligt and Delo, they probably all start, don't they? Do you think that the Europa final, if they're fit? Aiden Heaven, I doubt he'd start if he was fit. I don't think you're going to throw him back into the team for Europa League final. I definitely would start Lenny Yoro. De Ligt, it just depends how fit he is, because we brought him back, was it for the Brentford game? And he broke down again. He obviously wasn't 100% fit. So I don't know on that one. We'll have to wait and see what happens. He was asked about the sort of the situation. He gave a sort of manager's answer, didn't he? With some of these injuries, it's not like it's, oh yeah, they're all definitely fully fit, but it does feel like positive news. Santa Notch, I think this is one from a little while ago. He says, Spurs midfield out for the final, our defence out for the final, fun times. Tony Usoa says, Jay, isn't it majorly embarrassing for the club, though, that Amorim, Bruno and others are paying for staff and their families to travel? Yeah, I get that. I'm not about that. I like it from the point of view from Amorim and Bruno. I think it's admirable. But Manchester United, a club the size of Manchester United, the stature of Manchester United, the revenue of Manchester United, should not have the manager and the captain paying for tickets for the staff. Yeah? And if you want to know why we're in this situation, head down to Tampa or wherever it is and you'll find the answer there. The Glazers, we're $1 billion in debt. This club is on its arse financially because of their mismanagement and because of the amount of money they have taken out as dividends and the amount of debt they have saddled us with. We are still over £1 billion in debt or whatever it is. That all started 20 years ago. 20 years ago last week, when their ownership of Manchester United was confirmed with that leverage buyout, and we are still paying the price. And this is why now we are a bit of a laughingstock when it comes to how we're handling tickets and situations like that because of the Glazers. And you can look at Sir Jim Ratcliffe and some of his decisions as well. I get that. I'm not here to defend him, but I think the sort of the root or the cause of all these issues starts with the Glazer family. Ridwan says, Lisandro, De Ligt, Yoro will start if all fit. They would. If all they were fit, that's probably your back three, innit? Martinez, Yoro, De Ligt. I think that's a pretty strong back three. I don't know. Obviously, Martinez is out of the picture, like I said earlier. I don't know what's going to happen with Yoro and De Ligt. Maybe he just takes a chance because it's a final and goes, look, you know, I'll start you, and if you're not fit, then we'll sub you off. I just hope they are. I really like Lenny Yoro and I really like Matthijs De Ligt. I think they're both very, very good defenders. And I think it's a shame they've had injury issues this season, because I think had both of those been fit all season, we might have reached the dizzy heights of 14th. Let's talk about Zirkzee. Joshua Zirkzee, I mentioned him earlier, becoming a little bit of a fan favourite, isn't he, old Joshua? I think he's very popular amongst the Old Trafford faithful. Says here in the Metro, Inter Milan have begun internal discussions over a possible loan move for United forward Joshua Zirkzee. Zirkzee arrived at Old Trafford with weighty expectations on his shoulders following a high-profile £36.5 million switch from Bologna last summer. The 23-year-old was considered one of the most promising young attackers in Italian football, but has flattered to deceive across a largely underwhelming, albeit injury-hit debut season with United. Says Juve expressed a strong interest over a proposed deal in the winter, but Ruben Amorim made it clear he wanted to keep hold of Zirkzee for the second half of the campaign, and the Dutchman stayed put. If I'm going to be honest, I think there's a player there. I do. I'm a little bit concerned about the whole 9.5 thing. I think that's a little bit odd. I'm sorry, maybe it's me, I'm just old and set in my ways, but what's that mean? What are you on about? Like, what, 9.5? Come on, man. You're either a 9 or you're a 10, let's just be real. I like him on the ball. I don't think he gets enough goals, I understand all that, but he is entertaining, he's a bit of a throwback. He's been compared to sort of a Berbatov type player who's good on the ball and can do those little silky skills and has a great touch and all the rest of it. I think if you put a goal scorer in front of him, you could have him as one of those number 10s. And I also think he's a different type of player than some of the other 10s we've got. If we bring in Mateus Cunha, if you have Alejandro Garnacho, if you have Ahmad, if you have maybe even Cobbemenu in a 10, and you have Zirkzee, they're all different types of 10s. And Mason Mount, sorry, let's not forget him, who can play in that position, but offer you something a little bit different. And it's good to have the opposition having to think of something differently if you mix it up a little bit. It's not just more of the same. You want players that can fit in a system, but you also want a bit of a variation on those players. We've always had that at Manchester United when we've been successful. You've always had players that bring a certain quality but are slightly different. Going back to, back in the day when we were winning the treble, look at the 4 strikers we had: Sheringham, Solskjaer, Cole and York. All amazing players, all slightly different, but could all fit into the system and play in that 4-4-2 role that we needed. You need players like that. You need different options, but players that have that quality. I think there's a player in Zirkzee. Let me know what you think. Get involved in the chat and the comments. Do you agree? Floors, who's been a member of the Academy for 14 months, thank you for your support, says 89 to 90 was bad, and 3 years later we were champions, having only really added Schmeichel, Irwin, Kanchelskis, Cantona and Giggs. Yeah, the FA Cup saved us that season, didn't it? I think Fergie was in all sorts of trouble. There was that game on their way at Forest where I think it was the 3rd round of the FA Cup where if the rumours were that if he lost that game, he might have got sacked, although Bobby Charlton, who was on the board at the time, said that was nonsense. But there was certainly mounting pressure. You remember Pete Molyneux had his big banner when it said, 3 years of excuses and we're still crap, Tara Fergie. But we did turn it around. Also, the sort of foundations were being laid or had been laid already under Sir Alex Ferguson. The youth was beginning to be much more important than it had been sort of under Ron Atkinson, who wasn't overly concerned with the youth team. I know we'd had Norman Whiteside and Mark Hughes come through, but it wasn't like he was mad on the youth team. Fergie increased the number of scouts. He looked more at the youth team. He laid the foundations there. Plus, during 89-90, we made some signings that went on to do decent things. I think Paul Ince came in around them. He helped us win a title. Gary Pallister came in around them. He helped us win a title. Also, around that time, it almost also goes under the radar, we made some signings that didn't help us win a title, that, likes of Neil Webb, likes of Danny Wallace, weren't around by the time we won the title, certainly didn't play a part, but helped us get towards there, helped us, sort of climb up that table and do that. And maybe that's what happens at United. Maybe there's 1 or 2 signings that come in for a couple of years, move us towards the top end of the table, but aren't necessarily going to be here by the time you win a title. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Get involved in the chat and the comments. Dan Fenton says, Zirkzee for me has improved massive until he got injured. Bob Relf says, Spurs paying for their 700 staff makes them look like they've more fans. Let's talk about Adam Lawrence. Adam Lawrence, who's absolutely smashed it with the Academy team. Every time you watch Academy Review with me and Finn will be waxing lyrical about Adam Lawrence, and rightly so. He's leaving, and Jason Wilcox is already started talks to replace the outgoing Manchester United coach. It says here in the Manchester Evening News. I think we scroll down, we might have a little bit more info here. Keep going. We don't care about all the info about the Thank you. So last week we found out that he's leaving as he looks to confirm a new challenge. Sources have said Lawrence is open to working in a first-team environment or a fresh academy challenge for the next step of his career. The 39-year-old has been offered roles in English Football League, first-team coaching Selbs, and is currently weighing up his next move ahead of the new season. I think he goes into a club as a coach and does very well. Neil Wood was the last high-profile coaching department from the academy. Wood managed the under-21s for 3 years, and he was appointed at class of 92 owned Salford after his exit. Lawrence seems likely to take a similar route and could manage a first team next season. Yeah, and then they thanked him there. Thanked Adam Lawrence. Done very well. Brought through some good young players. The academy have had a fantastic record on his watch as well. And I think we can all wish him well. Hopefully he'll get, the opportunity these talents deserve and go on and do well. Sometimes with coaches, we can dismiss them or ignore them or not really know how valuable or how talented they are. Remember all the sort of noise around Kieran McKenna, people questioning what he brought to the squad and what he brought to the setup and should he have been involved. He goes to Ipswich as a manager and absolutely smashes it. I know they've been relegated, but let's have it right. Most people didn't expect them to get out of League One, let alone get back-to-back promotions to the Premier League. So you can never dismiss a coach who's done well. And Adam Lawrence, certainly that guy. And El says, get Butty back. Everyone loves Butt. Nicky Butt was involved, wasn't he? He left a couple of years ago, I think it was. Apparently he left, wasn't a great departure in terms of the acrimony there between Nicky Butt and some of his bosses, and I think John Murtaugh, I think he had a bit of a fallout with him. Maybe someone like Nicky Butt does come back. I don't know. Well, let's have a look and see what happens. As always, we will keep you posted. Glenn F in the chat, good to see you. Kieran says Ipswich didn't buy big. They didn't, did they? Ipswich kind of just cut the cloth accordingly, didn't they? They didn't go, right, we're going to spend loads of money we haven't got to try and stay in the Premier League. They spent some money, but they didn't spend loads of money. I don't think they expected to get relegated, but I think they're in a good position where relegation isn't going to ruin them, because you look at their wage bill, you look at the players they've got, you look at the facts as well, they're going to get a few quid, aren't they, for Liam Delap? Probably not as much as they'd want, but it's there. The buyout clause, I think, is 30 million quid because they've been relegated. Here's one of these stories about Victor Osimhen, which, I'm going to be honest with you, is completely meaningless. But we'll talk about it because it's in the papers. So Victor Osimhen responds to Man United legend, as crunch talks begin. I think Rio did a little chant in the Barbers or something, didn't he, about Victor Osimhen, and Victor Osimhen shared it. So, I mean, it doesn't mean he's coming to Manchester United. I think Rio Ferdinand on his podcast the other day, it might have been the one when he did with Steve, to be fair, was talking about how he'd like Victor Osimhen at United. I would love Victor Osimhen at United. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we can afford his wages. I don't feel like there's enough noise to indicate he's coming to United. I think if he was, we'd have heard a lot more about it than we have done. It feels like it's all gone cold on that front. A couple of years ago, there was a time when you thought maybe he could come to Manchester United. Remember when it's just started going sour with him in Napoli? Thought maybe could something happen there. Obviously, he went to Galatasaray. Now he's looking at a new transfer. I don't think he's going to end up at Manchester United. You may disagree. Let me know what you think. Even before he went to Galatasaray, there was a time when he was being linked with United. I think he'd be one of those strikers, if you got him, he'd be very popular with the fans because he scores some great goals, doesn't he? Sticks his face and his head in things that he shouldn't, to wear a mask for a reason. But I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't think it will. Ludu7 says he could be Osimhen. You remember that pun from the Wednesday night show? Dan Fenton says Osimhen is too much on his wages. He wants 400k a week. Ain't going to happen. Yeah, I think United are moving away from those ridiculous wages that we've had in the past, haven't we? Where we've give players sort of not 400k a week, but not far off it. I think some players like De Gea and Pogba and Rashford and Casemiro at times have been on wages not far from that. Alexis Sanchez is another one who's on crazy money. But I don't think that's going to happen. Certainly not with the state of the finances at the minute, and nor should it, to be honest with you. I think we need to be a little bit more sensible. Let's talk about Gyokeres, Victor Gyokeres, because United have been linked with this guy for quite some time. At one point, it looked like we were going to get him. Everyone thought because of the Ruben Amorim connection, because it's obvious we need a striker, because he cannot stop scoring goals. I think he's got over 50 goals this season or something stupid. It makes sense. However, Arsenal look like they're in for him. United doesn't look like we can afford to pay the buyout clause that he's got, around 62.5 million, very similar to Mercedes Cunha and his wage as well. Plus, we don't know if we're going to have Champions League football, and he might have already made his decision. Feels like it's all gone cold. Says here in the Mirror that Arsenal have sort of got into advanced talks with him, I think it says. So they've agreed a deal, or they agreed a sort of wage fee with him. I think this has come from a publication abroad, but the Mirror are running it. I don't know how reliable it is. It does feel like he's going to end up at Arsenal, to me. At the minute, things can change. But of all the transfers that you expect to happen with all the clubs you expect Gyokeres to go to, it does feel like Arsenal are probably the favourites. So you can see there, he got 43 goals last season, 52 this season. I mean, he's scored more goals than we have as a club, which says it all. Well, I don't know, actually, in all comps, it might be about the same, but either way, he scored a lot of goals, and it'd obviously be a massive bonus having him playing for Manchester United. I just don't know if it's going to happen. I don't feel like it is, and it feels like Arsenal are in the best position to get him. Let me know what you think. Ryan Veg Tech says, rumours Wesley Sneijder spotted at Carrington. Do you remember those rumours? Do you remember the Wesley Sneijder reports? They went on for years, didn't they? That was mental, that. Yukon Farkov says, if we're going to fix our goal-scoring problem, scraping around Ipswich for unproven bargains isn't the answer. Fine, I understand that sentiment. Who should we be getting? That's my only counter-argument to that, is if we're not going to get Liam Delap, which, fine, I understand the people have reservations about a player that's had one good season in the Premier League. Who should we get? Who can we get? Let's be honest. Glenn F says, so no Delap coming in, not be able to handle the pressure of playing for United. Mikhail says, people have the strongest opinions about people whose names they can't even spell. Depends how much we would have to pay for Gyokeres. Yukon Farkov says, Jonathan David. We talked about Jonathan David last night. I wouldn't be against that transfer. I think you could bring him in and Delap, and that would work. Will it happen, though? I don't know. He's on a free transfer, isn't he, Jonathan David, from Lille. So it's certainly, the price is right, especially for Manchester United and these current guys. Will it happen, though? I'm not so sure. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you. Someone else saying, Tobias Nielsen says, Sesko. Thank you to everyone who got involved in the chat and comments. It's going to be back later on today with Off the Bar. We've got quite a lot of content coming up as well. Go and check out the video we did yesterday with Adam McCullough at Carrington and Old Trafford, chatting to the likes of Nuzair Mazraoui, chatting to the likes of Diogo Dalot as well. Make sure, if you've not done so already, you are hitting like, share and subscribe. And just before we go, I've got a little plug for a charity game that I'm involved in later tonight. It's for the Boo Centre, a homeless charity in Manchester. I've just put a link in the chat to that one. You can buy tickets. It's in North Manchester, FC United's ground. If you can't get down there, you can always buy a ticket. It helps out that charity. 30 years. It's a 30-year anniversary of the Boo Centre. They've been helping homeless across Greater Manchester, and it is a massive issue in this city as well and beyond. So if you can help out, I appreciate that. And don't worry if you can. I've been Jay Motti. This has been The Paper Talk. Thanks for watching.